All right, cool. We're excited to be here right now. And as you can see on the screen, we have Munciana Volleyball and the Arsenal and a sports performance partnership, which we are so pumped to talk about. We're not just talking about a partnership today. I have Coach Mike Lingenfelter from Munciana. I have Coach Eric Van Matre, which many of you have seen before. And then you're also stuck with me, BJ. And today we're going to talk about a lot that's going on. We're going to talk about philosophy. We're going to talk about approaches. We're going to talk about sports performance training in a variety of different ways. But there's so much exciting things to talk about. And I really want to lead off with a question for especially those listening that might not have the whole backdrop on Munciana, Mike, and what Munciana is this question is like, it's a success beyond the borders of even Indiana. You know, you're going all over the place. You're in Canada, you're down all over the place. I just love to hear and learn like what philosophy has fueled this for you from starting it to where you find yourself now.
Well, I think that one of the things that most people aren't aware of is it's the oldest operating volleyball program in America.
Wow.
There's none older, and it's not even close. With that said, it may well be the longest operating youth sport organization in the country, which you start to look at it is quite phenomenal from a philosophy standpoint. Understand it's been honed over 50 plus years, and it's changed. There's been a lot of ebb and flow to what we do, and so that's changed. But I think the one part that has always stayed true was the commitment to athletic excellence and lifetime experience. You know, I think that a lot of people chase great. I don't know if they understand that chasing great on the outside is the same as chasing great in your everyday world. And so we want that combination to occur on a daily basis. And so the process of getting better and teaching people has those two components tied deeply into it. We're going to do what it takes to be top of the food chain athletically, but we're also going to pay the same amount of attention, equal but opposite, to creating an experience that these people can take with them for a lifetime. One of the reasons we've been here 50 plus years is I think we've achieved that.
What do you think, what's different? I think there's a lot of people that can say those things that are trying, even in basketball, baseball, hockey, they can say it, and there's a lot of shared intent. But you've actually pulled it together and put together this track record that's unprecedented in the sport. What do you think went different for you where others, it was a failure to launch or just stopped?
I think that, one of the things that helped Munciana right off the bat was its attachment to Don Shondell, its attachment to at the time, kind of a world-renowned men's volleyball program at Ball State. Mm-hmm. I think that gave us the buoy or the life jacket we needed to stay around until we could make our own. And we have. We've evolved immensely into what we are now. What we do is a lot different than what it was 20 years ago. Mm. But the success is heightened each year, and the barometer of the measure that we've used, isn't, you could look and say, well, they've won 40 national championships, 400 and something All-Americans. The barometer is equal on the other side as well. I know that just from my teams in the 20 years, there's, I think 40 plus doctors and lawyers out of that group. 8 of those kids have gone on to become Division I head volleyball coaches. 3 are head of corporations, major corporations in the United States. And so my measuring tools are across the board, and I want to measure championships both on and off. And I think that principle was floated by Don Shondell, who was sown into all of our souls, and has just been exploded by virtue of the work ethic he gave us and by our own visions. I think that if that makes sense in a roundabout way.
What's the hardest part about doing that? It's, especially listening to this, it's like the success, 400 like all those stories and the side. Like, what was the part where maybe it could have went another direction, but you had to stick with it, or that hard times where it's like, hey, should we change this? Should we do something different? But you stuck with it.
I think holding on to the rope. I mean, in life, you're always going to be challenged. And you're going to be challenged. Your theories are going to be challenged. Your character is going to be challenged. Your approach is going to be challenged. And we've held the rope. We held the rope through all of the changes in volleyball. Mm-hmm. We've held the rope through COVID. My biggest thing with COVID is I refused to reduce staff. I refused to let any employee go on unemployment. Mm-hmm. I refused, and it was one of the things that people look back on and ask me why I did it. Because I didn't want to give. I didn't want to give an inch. I didn't want to let the people around me think that I was taking a hand off the rope for any period. We just held the rope and kept climbing. And I think that we have been challenged. There are a lot of challenges, but I think if I have one thought process as to why I or Muncie or any of the things we've been associated with have been successful, is we just refuse to let go of the rope. And I don't know if that makes sense to everybody that would be watching or to you guys, but I do believe in the end that that would be my epitaph.
I like it. I read something this morning. I'd read some Stoic philosophy in the morning. It said it was like something the key to successful life involved in two words: persist and resist.
I agree.
What to persist in and what to resist. And it was I can't help but make the connection to what you're just saying of just like, once you make your call, that's the call we're making. And our character is going to be judged on, do we hold the rope or not? Like we said what the rope is, and what's the wind or the wave that's going to break it. And for Munciana during those times, you said, no, like this is what we're about. And we know what we're not about. And that just is what it is. And there's people that are going to like it, and they're going to really benefit, and there's people that aren't, and maybe those people aren't our people, and that's going to have to be okay with us.
Well, I think in Stoicism it's called amare fate, which is admire your fate, or this is who we are. Mm-hmm. Yep. This is who we are. This is what we do, and we're going to do what we do better than you. But we're going to hold on to what we do, and this is what we do. And so I agree with that 100%.
Cool. Thanks, Mike, for sharing that philosophy. Eric, let's talk a little bit about the Arsenal, because we're going to talk about a partnership a little bit later. So just in your opinion and in your feelings, like what is that philosophy that have yielded the success holistically with what you've built at the Arsenal?
Yeah, so I think the big thing when it comes to what we do at the Arsenal, we tout ourselves as a performance training facility, and training for performance style training is something that you're training to get better at something you want to do competitively. That looks different for everyone, but there's a base concept or base principle across the board that we need to be able to check these boxes as we go. I heard it from him first back in the day, but it's teach slow, train fast. And so, if we want someone to be able to run really fast, but they haven't learned to crawl yet, well, we can't just start with sprinting, right? And so with a lot of what I believe, and I think it goes all the way as low as 6 years old, upwards to 60 years old, the base principles are relatively the same in a lot of ways. Of one, like we need to have coordination. We need to understand our body and space, proprioception. And I think we need to have the ability to do work. We need to have some work capacity. So that way when I do one hard thing, I'm not exhausted and I can't continue through the session. So just a base level work capacity and coordination are important for us to do anything past that. Once we get there, that next tier up, do I have good enough mobility and stability in the range of motion I need to do to, one, minimize risk of injury, and then two, optimize my performance. All right, there's certain things that I need to do and certain positions I need to be able to get in to be able to make the most out of the endeavor I'm trying to perform better in. And so can I do those well? Once I can do those well and I understand my body and space and I have the ability to do work over and over, now I can start loading those things. We can start training, we can start adding weight to that. From there, we do want to start with a lower risk option, because a lot of times for people, your body weight is a load. So starting with body weight movements is important, because now when I start adding load, it's going to change your balance a little bit. It changes the stability aspect a little bit. And so we move up that tier into strength. Well, with strength, we have 6 primary movements that almost all movements stem from those 6 primary foundational roots. You have your squat, your hinge, your push and your pull in all planes of motion with the upper body, a lunge or a single leg movement, and then something where we're bracing connecting the rib cage and the pelvis, the spine and the pelvis. So a lot of carrying work, static holds, things of that nature to help maintain rigidity of the spine. And so once we can do those well, now we can start testing speed around that, right? If I want to squat well, I need to first understand where my body should be in a squat. Well, then I can actually start testing. Can I go down slow, up fast, or change that variable before I start then loading it next? Because once I start loading it, that's where we can have some fun. But if I don't build that base first and I start loading, yeah, I can see some early results, but I'm going to hit a plateau either really quickly or I'm going to get hurt sooner. And so we want to really build that base really, really, really wide and work our way up that pyramid to help ensure that when we're training for performance, regardless of whether it's performance of life as a 65-year-old grandmother who wants to pick their kid up off the ground, or, an 18-year-old athlete trying to go play D1 college volleyball, we got to be able to check these boxes to be able to reach that peak pinnacle of performance, which is at that top of that pyramid.
That's awesome. A couple things to riff off that before I ask you another question. And just what I found working with you during the time I've had it, we've been in existence for just over 11 years doing what we're doing. Started as a CrossFit gym, and I was a track and field coach at Ball State, pole vault coach, and had all the background, and then was athletically homeless and had to build a home where I could still train like I did when I was in college. And Eric, we've been working together a while, and what I found working with you is you have this uncompromising approach to that baseline, knowing where these baselines are, moving from a safe position. And much like what Mike's shared earlier about holding the rope, one thing I found with you is you hold the rope on, you are ready or you are not ready, and we can teach you what that means. So you have healthier athletes, you have faster athletes, you have fourth quarter athletes, second half athletes, and there's other kids that are on the sidelines with hamstrings, ankles, all these things that are actually preventable, that other people say, oh, it's a freak thing, just really stinks that knee really stinks. And then even I've seen him take people that have prescriptions from a physical therapist, an athletic trainer or something, and actually not counteract them, but help the athlete do them. Because that's sometimes, hey, you should go do this. And often athletes walk out, I'm going to go do that. And then they don't. Yeah, and then you come back, you doing it? Yeah, coach, I'm doing it. No, you're not. You're working with them and performing what looks like miracles, which is really just like, yeah, we're going to be fine. So I've seen that. And I think one of the reasons I love working with you, and you like really live the spirit of what the Arsenal is just uncompromising. We want to be great. We don't care about the money. We don't care about anything else. It's like, is this going to make us great? Which on the downside, Mike, we don't do a lot of things, but the things that we choose to do, we tend to do them well. And since it's a service coaching business, it all revolves around the talent that walks in our door that wants to be self-aware, have a growth mindset, and wants to get results. And we cannot, and when Eric and I talk about all the time trying to save people, we can't want it for our coaches. They have to actually want those things to create the results that Eric has and extend his reach. But it's been a blast to be a part of it. Mike?
Uncompromising is beautiful. And sitting here listening to you talk about that, that's a pride point for me. I think that I've always been uncompromising, and it goes way back into his childhood with me. I will tell you that it's a gift. It's also a curse, but it's also a skill set that I wish more people would engage, embrace, because it's the only way to get from point A to point B. It really is. We can kid each other all we want, but at the end of the day, sheer will, grit in your teeth, and just saying this is going to be the way it's going to go, and we're going to get there come hell or high water, is a lost art. And those that can embrace that tend to have a lot of success. Those that don't tend to have a lot of excuses. And I think that's a fair call. But to hear that that's one of the qualities you've seen in him makes me really proud, because I at some point I was one drop of water in that big bucket that has made him. Yeah.
Well, and I think we're just seeing the beginning.
Yeah, I do.
So that's a great segue to my next question, Eric. Why are you here in Muncie? Why are you doing this in Muncie? Why are you not somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I am locally from here. I wandered out for a bit after graduate school and got some experience in some really cool places. I had a few opportunities working in gyms under healthcare professionals. I worked under a chiropractor for the first few years, in the facility. I worked under a doctor of physical therapy down when I was training hands-on with Travis Mash of Mash Elite, who's a senior international weightlifting coach. And so it was one of those things that, as much as I enjoyed those experiences, I am very close to my family. I am a bit of a homebody. And so as much as I enjoyed those, family is very important to me first. And so And by family, it's not just my blood family. It's friends and people that I've been close to all along. Just I missed being around that. And so, that's the great thing about social media is you can see them from a distance and you can see what's going on, but it's also the negative sometimes is you're like, man, I miss being there. I miss being a part of that. So it kind of steered me back this direction to try to do some of those things back here around Muncie.
Beautiful. I'm glad you're here, because sometimes I get asked, it's like, what are you doing in Muncie? And I have to just respond to that, saying and give them why, because I'm a transplant from Erie, Pennsylvania, and it's like, well, what kept you? So it's great to hear that, particularly for the athletes that you impact. It's like, what's this guy doing here? Because sometimes people look at what they have in their own backyard and assume it can't be that great because it's here. And I think that there's a lot of things, not only just in this group that we're talking about here, but even in our humble little town of Muncie, that have defied that and make that not the truth. And I joke with folks when I'm traveling around the country, it's like, I'm like, where one of the richest guys in the world lives? Like, where? I'm like, Nebraska. Do you know where, flight and space, you know where all that was invented? Like Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Have you ever been there? No, I'm like, it's nothing. Like, there's nothing there. And it's like you could keep finding these quote unquote one-offs and realize, they're actually more the majority than you think.
Well, I think I'd rather be a unicorn and make where I'm at great.
Yeah,
I think that, I look at Eric and knowing that field, there's tons of money in large cities. There's tons of opportunity in large cities. Why not bring opportunity to where you want to be? Mm-hmm. And I think that, we can seek all of these great places, or we can just settle down and make our place great.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that Eric brings to that, as well as I do, BJ, his knowledge, his ability, his expertise is well beyond the walls of Muncie.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could grow the walls of Muncie, then we can make this a place, a destination. We can make this a place of importance, and that's why people like Eric are important.
Beautiful. Let's go. I want to go higher level now, Mike, and I want you to start with this one. And I'm sure many people want to hear this. It's an extension of philosophy, which is the characteristics of excellent athletes versus mediocre athletes. Like, what do you see in those over the years in all of your coaching? And Eric, I'd love for you to respond to this too after Mike.
I probably get hit with this more than anything else. No matter where I am in the world, either athletes or teams, they'll ask that same question, excellent and mediocre, or good and great and good. Mm-hmm. They'll ask athletes or teams. My team answer and athlete answer are the same. The greatest athletes I've ever worked with, or the most excellence I've dealt with, the difference between good and great or excellence and mediocre lies simply in what they say and what they do. The difference. So the great teams, the great players say they want this, and they do this or this. The mediocre or good say they want this, and they do this. And they're forced to face, we either change our dreams or change our work ethic. One of the two's got to. You can't exist doing what you're doing. And so namely when like Eric, for instance, the difference between Eric and some of the really, really good guys that I'd worked with in those days, the really, really, really average ones, and when I'm saying average, I'm talking good. I'm not talking anything less. My version of mediocre is anything less than excellent. Mm-hmm. And so that's a pretty broad span. But the good or mediocre would walk out of the building thinking they'd done enough. The excellent or great would come up and ask me, what else could they do? What else is there? One gets full and the other never seems to settle their appetite. I think that's the difference. And you look at it simply lies. It simply lies in they're willing to do what everybody else isn't. I think if you ask me the characteristic that matters the most, obviously you got genetics and you got all of the niche words that you could throw at it, but at the end of the day, to break it into its simplest form, they're just willing to do what others aren't. And that's sad. Not what others can't. They won't. Can't is anatomy, it's genetics, it's physiology. Can't. Won't is attitudinal. It's decision making. They do what others won't. I think that would be my answer at the end.
Diving a little deeper into that, from just a coach's perspective, talk through some times when you saw someone that had the out of the world potential, obviously not using names, but had that the level of the output, the level of the want to, the level of that hunger just wasn't there. Like, how do you experience that as a coach? Not just seeing it as being disappointed, essentially, like they're not going to get this because they don't get it, but you as a coach seeing man, I know it, and it's got to not feel great.
It is a wonderful word because as a coach, you use it all the time. She has it, he has it, they don't have it. It would be an interesting word to have people, and I had a team one time literally define it because, I used it so much. Kid walks in a gym, that kid has it. What is it? In my mind, to answer your question, they're good at being lonely. They're really good at being lonely. My favorite moments are when I walk in and just capture a kid mastering the art of the lonely practice, meaning they're in there doing things without guidance, without governance, and without me. They're just in there on their own, working to find a higher plane that I probably painted the vision, but I didn't hold their hand walking to it. When those guys can wander into that area by themselves and to master the art of the lonely practice, that's the separator. Because it's a hunger thing, right? Yep. I can't feed you if you're not hungry. I can't. Yep. But the guys that are hungry, they'll eat while I'm there, and then those guys will sneak back to the fridge. They're constantly looking for a little bit more. And so those guys that kind of sneak in and do more, in Eric's case, come in extra, stay a little longer. Those are the ones, and do it by themselves. It's not to get biblical, but teach a man to fish versus handing him one would probably be a good way to go. And if I can teach you to want more and to start to become working on your own or master the art of the lonely practice, I think that's where it's at.
Have you ever seen somebody get it? Have you ever seen that mindset shift where you're like, you're not doing it, and all of a sudden it's what do you think precipitated that shift?
I think what precipitates that is the coach not lacking the combative courage to continue to battle. Because what we're doing daily is trying to force people out of their comfort zones, and subconsciously they don't want to get out of that comfort zone. And I think that what happens with some coaches, they just yield or they just back off the combat and lack the combative courage to consistently and constantly beg for what they want. And stay in that fight is what makes that moment come about, because at some point the athlete looks up and this cat's not leaving. This cat's not leaving. So I may want to adjust and embrace becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's where the switch occurs, honestly.
Yeah. When I think you must carry too, and I can just tell the time I get to spend with you and the people that know you, that's built from a coach's standpoint, which is where I'm lingering right now on, do I trust you as a person? Do I trust your competence too? And then do I believe you care about me?
Yep.
I think those are the two prerequisites for a coach being able to push, because I think some coaches want it for themselves. Yeah. They want to win. They want it, and they're frustrated, and they're not really thinking about the athlete. But I just see in you and your coaches, and I see it in Eric too. Like, I'm here loving you, and I'm here trying to instill this knowledge, and you have the capacity to do it.
Well, I think the really good ones, and where I see it with Eric, and I've heard a lot of his clients have talked to me, and one of the things I've always thought and embraced, I think you train to the heart, not to the talent. Meaning, you train to the athlete's heart, because that's where the care and trust comes from. The talent is obvious. I mean, a specimen walks in the room, you know that. And I don't really care just to train to their athleticism or their geneticism. I really want to train the person, and I want to maximize each individual. And so I think that the care and trust, I think you're 100% right. I think that's where most coaches lose it.
Yeah.
I think it's where he's really gifted. But I think it's because he honestly trains to the heart and not to the talent of the athlete. His level of care doesn't alter from the best athlete to the worst athlete. His train of care and doesn't, or his levels aren't dictated by the athlete's level. It's dictated by his immense love for what he does and his passion for making people better.
Thanks, Mike. Eric, what would you add with Mike shared about excellent athletes, the characteristics versus mediocre athletes from your perspective?
Yeah, I think you're going to hear a lot of the same things repeated just in different words. When I was down in North Carolina, one of the big things that we had as part of our weightlifting team, and those of you who don't know, I trained with Travis Mash. He was one of Team USA's coaches. I was in a room of like 25 national level competitors. And one of the biggest overall themes was master the mundane. And so, I think it goes into, like Mike said, being lonely. Like, the mundane things are not the fun, sexy things to do, and not a lot of people want to do them. And if you master those, you got to understand there's not going to be likely many people or anyone along that journey with you in a lot of the depths that you want to go. I think a good example right now, I have an athlete that's a junior in high school. He's a wrestler. He took 8th as a freshman in state finals, took, I believe, 3rd or 4th last year. And he's in training multiple, especially this week's fall break. So he's in actually training in the mornings, coming back in the evenings. He's got a big match this weekend, but he's a kid that, just a couple weeks ago, he was part of our class and warm-ups were starting, but I was finishing with a client and they know their warm-ups of what to do, especially him. He's been training with me for about 4 or 5 years now. And so there's a group of 6 kids over there. I said, hey, take them through the warm-up. And they were going through it, and I got done with my client. And I kind of just sat back, and I'm like, I want to see what happens here. I want to see how it goes. And it was okay, but like you could just tell the intention wasn't there. There wasn't a great demeanor about it. And they get done, and they're like ready to get into agility. And I'm like, okay. I'm like back on the end of the turf over here. I'm like, we're going to go through everything you just did. And they kind of look at me, and I'm like, well, can you really look me straight in the face and tell me that you prepared your body to its full extent to do the things that I'm about to ask you to do? And you could just see it. Like, all the other kids were kind of like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. Whereas like the look on his face was like, I'm not doing what great athletes do. I'm not doing what excellent athletes do. And he didn't make excuses. He was like, you're right. Like, we need to do this. And so, the other kids were like, oh, my bad. They understand, but like, you could just see the demeanor on his face relative to the other because his hunger is there. Right? I think his hunger is there and he wants that championship. He doesn't want to be on the podium seeing someone standing a little higher than him. And I think it's really important for you to have that hunger and understand that hunger that you have is going to be a lonely journey because most people are not going to have that. If you want to be great and you want to be at the top, that hunger's got to be hungrier than everyone else, in my opinion.
And it takes a level of self-awareness and selflessness to do that, which is, it's not my way. Oh, I thought I did it. I don't look good. There's a lot of ego stuff that has to sit in the rearview mirror to be able to accept that and say, all right, like, let's go.
Yeah, I think before you can self-motivate, you have to be able to self-evaluate. If you don't know where you stand, how do you know where you're going? And I agree with that. Master the mundane, yours today, mine tomorrow. I love that. Yeah. I think that the guys that are really special do ordinary in extraordinarily well fashion, and that's a great quote. I'm stealing that.
Yep. There you go, Eric.
That's good stuff.
Well, that was honestly a big part of why I moved to North Carolina. Like, I wanted to get into competitive weightlifting myself, and like being in exercise science, I had a master's degree and understanding the human body the way I did. I was like, I felt like I was just missing something. And knowing at the time, Travis Mash, if you trained in gym, it was actually free to train in gym because he did so much online training and ebooks and things like that. And I'm like, I was making enough money doing remote training or coaching at the time. I was like, let's go have this experience. And really that was, there were some minor differences in terms of timing and things like that you saw, but like the biggest difference was that mastering the mundane and holding on to that rope of it.
Yep. I love it. Let's dive a little into the weeds here because I want to get into why we're all sitting here shortly, and it's about sports performance. So I'd love to start with you, Eric, on, what exactly is this training? And I know earlier in the philosophy you kind of talked about like your approach, but what is sports performance training and why should an athlete or other coaches care?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did mention performance training or sports performance training is training for better performance in the sport or sports that you want to play, and its most basic level. From there, it's going to look a little different for each athlete. Everyone's got different genetic abilities. Everyone's got different, anthropometrics, height, weight, things of that nature. Everyone's also going to have a different mindset, right? So that's where you got to understand what's the best suited for that athlete to develop. However, there still needs to be those boxes checked along the way, because I got to know the rules to be able to break the rules, to get outside of them, right? I got to know the box to work outside of the box. And so, we've got to master those base principles first. And the better you master those, the higher potential you have to climb up that pyramid. But I think that's part of the issue we see with a lot of people this day and age is we want to rush that foundational standpoint and get right into that sport specific really quick. They need to be training just for volleyball. They're 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like, yes, there's certain things we need to adhere to that we're building their body for volleyball to make sure they can do well. But like, how about we make sure that they also do some of these other things to make sure we're not creating a plateau, because there's an old strength coach, Julian Pinot. He's not really around as much anymore, but he's a very conceptual guy. And he talks a lot about when you're moving up in the performance shaft, he talks about like an elevator shaft, you've got these corners and these pillars. And if you pull up one side too fast, you're not working on these other variables, you're either going to get stuck or it's going to break at some point. And so I need to make sure I'm still bringing up that entire system, until there gets a point when the body is relatively, 17, 18 starts getting into where we can really, 16, 17, really dial in specificity. I think when it comes to athletes that don't want to play other sports, like say you have a 12-year-old that's like, I want to play only volleyball, that's where I think it's even more important to double down on something like training with a sports performance professional or training professional, because they're going to know how to fill those holes around what they're doing regularly on the court. But I think a lot of it does stem down to, can I crawl before I walk? Can I walk before I jog? Can I jog before I run? Can I run before I sprint? And I think a lot of people just want to think walk to sprint. And that's really where a lot of our training principles align, is like, we will work you up that, because when it comes game time, if you're still walking, we got to figure out how to try to run, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we're not skipping these variables too far ahead, or else you're never going to reach the pinnacle, which you could get to.
And what problems in more specificity, if you had like a bulleted list, is if I'm a parent or I'm a coach thinking about where this fits in my cocktail of, I already have so much time that's getting put into this, and I'm learning these skills, I'm doing all this stuff. Like, what are the like a few of the high level check boxes that if you do this, this is what you'll be preventing, or this is what you'd be getting?
Yeah, I think reverting back to what I talked about earlier in the foundational movements, like if you can master those, the squat, it's learning to sit down and stand up. I mean, your ready position is in a squat. Most of the time, most athletes, we're in a quarter half squat position, right? So there, a hinge where I can actually bend over and get to the floor without getting stuck or having pain, discomfort. Can I push, can I pull, so I have well-rounded stability and strength in my upper body. I think those really kind of combine into, you can do that all body weight squat. You can, do just basic toe touches. You can do push-ups. You can do pull-ups, like all these body weight movements that help have great carryover. And then you can build upon those if we do want to get more sport specific down the road. But it's like, well, I want to, do this overhead hitting action. And it's like, well, you can't even hold your arm overhead for 30 seconds straight, stable. Why would we go beating it up with something over repeatedly that's going to cause a lot of stress to the area when you can't handle stress? So I think that's one of the biggest check boxes for people when they start implementing training is we're going to build the body's ability to handle more total stress volume. We build better tissue tolerance, so tendons, ligaments are able to withstand more repetitive actions. They can produce force better as they get tired still. We help strengthen the body to help supply the demands that the performance training or the sport requires, right? If you want to be a great athlete and you do want to do these extra things, well, can your body also handle doing all that? Because we do know this day and age, sleep and recovery is just as important to making sure that, you actually adapt to the stresses you put in front of you. If we don't recover from them, then we're not going to actually see the progress we're aimed at. And, that's, kind of going back to what separates good and great, I would say that's another thing this day and age you see is, athletes, it's hard because we have so much blue light in front of our face, getting good quality sleep repeatedly over and over and over.
Yeah, I love it. And just So there's on the whiteboard at the gym, there's a punishment and a policy if anyone's on their phone during his training session. So he's pretty serious. So he comes by that honestly. That's not just a throw in right there. He's totally there.
I used to make kids put them in a protein bucket is what I used to do when I didn't even have them. They're like, some parents didn't like it. It's like, well, if I need to reach them, I'm like, that's an hour and a half that they're in their training. Like, where they're at. Like, so. It's
like old days where it's like, we're all the kids. We're all the bikes.
Yeah, I deem it a weapon of mass distraction.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I mean, capping what you shared before, like those bullets, and and if you listen to this as a parent or athlete, and I happen to be a parent of 6 kids that play various sports, it's not just ability to perform on the field and do it without injury and pain. It's the ability to practice higher quality reps alone, doing the mundane and not doing it through the kind of hurts and pains that are actually detrimental to ongoing training. And you can only add so much volume. How am I going to do all that volume? This is part of the equation, part of the formula that answers that question. You have a body that can handle the volume. It's going to take 10,000 reps of that. Well, if you have a body that's only got 5,000 in it, we got a gap here that's going to lead to injury, or it's going to lead to burnout, mental, spiritual, physical. Like there's a variety of ways that's going to happen. And it seems like this is something in place that's the part of the medicine or subscription.
I agree.
Yep. Cool. All right, let's take it a layer deeper. Mike, just pass the baton to you. How do you envision this type of training elevating your players? Like, why are we even sitting here right now? Because you've known Eric for a while. You've known this, like you've been in this, and you know this. You have this background too. I guess, why is it important and why now?
Well, I think it's always been important. I will give you that. I think that now, we have the opportunity, we have the space, we have the potential to take it to a next level. I've always been an advocate of what sports performance does. Think about it. You don't put cheap gas in a Maserati. And that's kind of what I look at with our kids. I mean, we got some kids that are high performance sports cars, and we're filling them with pretty cheap gas. Part of the problem has been it's such a microwave generation. I can tell you this, that nothing out of your microwave is better than anything out of my grandmother's oven, with 100% certainty. Meaning, I think that just because it comes fast doesn't mean it's good. There's nothing that comes out of the microwave that is better than something that has been labored over, time on task, and spent time in the oven, heat. I think that those are good things. And so for our athletes, we need a little more of that. We need to spend a little bit more time and focus on making sure their bodies are capable of doing the things that we want them to do. You referenced, and I think it was an eloquent statement, I'm begging for mastering the art of the lonely practice, which equals more reps. Reps remove doubt, but the only way we can get those reps is to have a body that can sustain those reps. Yep. We've been doing steps 2, 3, and 4, but hadn't really embraced 1 nearly enough. We were dependent upon the athletes doing their own work. The bottom line is they need to be taught how to do this work, sports performance. They need to learn the nuances of their body and how their bodies work before they can even go to step 2. So out of all the things we've done in the last 20 years, this is the most important for us to go all the way back to the start and guarantee athletic excellence and a lifetime experience, because the things they learn in the weight room or with Eric or with sports performance carry on. They go to the court, they bleed onto the court and really elevate their performance, but they also bleed into their personal lifestyle and change how they'll live for the next 60 years. And so the most important thing we've done is bringing in you guys. The most important thing for our kids is to understand, and they'll see the elevation quickly. But out of all of the pieces of the puzzle, world-class training, we've trained as well as anybody in the world. But like I said, I think that for the most part, we were putting cheap gas into Maseratis. I am so jacked to put good gas in an elite sports car.
Awesome. I guess we're 2 or even 3 years from now, we're sitting back down again. In your vision, What happened because you brought this in?
I think the first thing that'll happen is we'll ask why in the hell it took so long. I think that will be the first thing. I am so excited at what is going to happen, not what could happen. I'm well beyond that. I'm not looking at this as a vision any longer. I'm looking at this as a process that's going to occur. And I think that one thing we'll look back on and go, man, those kids that left that were so special, there would have, could have, should have will enter my mind immediately. Mm-hmm. How much bigger could they have been? How much better could they be? To answer your question accurately, I think that we will see a group of athletes come out of here more prepared and better ready to do what they've got to do at the next level than ever before. And, you look at where our kids come out, and work ethic is top of the food chain. You ask any college program in the country. Training is as good as it gets. The one place where you could take a shot at our kids is they're not always prepared for what's going to hit them in the college strength area. Mm-hmm. College strength coaches and college strength programs are next level, especially for kids who have done little or none of what is necessary. These kids will get they'll get some paperwork, they'll get some programming sent to them, but most people don't know why, and more importantly, they don't know how, but more importantly, they don't know why they're doing these. And I think at the end, we'll have a higher level, a much more educated young lady leaving our program. And like I said, I will only be left with wondering why we didn't do it earlier.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's something that's, I first got into sports performance training right out of grad school. I was lucky I had a good group of kids. The owner's son went to a private Catholic school, but I had a few kids. I actually had 8 or 9 kids go play D1 football out of that year, and a handful of others go to big NAIA D3 schools. But I had 2 of them go play football at Notre Dame, and one went on to play in the NFL. And I was talking to him just a couple weeks ago, and he had a short run in the NFL. Had a back injury as a wide receiver, but when he went to Notre Dame, they have a very structured, like, we expect you at this point as a freshman, this point as a sophomore, this point as a junior, this point as a senior. And as an incoming freshman, he was already on the later tier of where they expect him as a junior, him and the other athlete that went in there. And then just like hearing him kind of talk about that again. And then he said still to this day, when he goes to the gym, a lot of what he does is still referenced around what he learned with me and how he learned to train there. And so I think, setting someone up for life, like knowing that he's still using things that I taught him after an NFL career, like that felt really good, But I think the other thing, that to go along with what Mike was talking about as well, is this day and age too, part of the reason I feel like there's becoming more of a need for it is kids don't go out and play. Kids don't go outside and do things. They're on their, they sit a lot more. We have a lot more video games. We have the phone. I didn't have that access. I was outside playing 4, 5, 6 hours a night after school, and I had to get my homework done first. But I'd go outside until it was time to shower and go to bed. And, you don't see that with kids anymore. And so I think a lot of the fundamental movement skills have diminished. You don't see a lot of good movement fundamentals unless they've worked with someone like me this day and age a lot of times, because kids do not go out and do those things anymore. And so that's where I think it is even more important to add something like this, because you have that ability to influence them that they're not getting exposure to.
Well, let's dive a level deeper into what the training is. So, okay, great. Philosophically, we know where it is. Like the basis, we know where it is. What are we preventing? The way I'd love you to attack this question, Eric, is I walk in for the first time with my gym shoes on and my clothes, and here I am, coach. Talk through what these sessions look like, and you can talk through progressively, if you will, of what happens when I'm in there for that hour and a half.
Yep. So we will be working with it at Munciana is we'll have hour sessions. Half will be dedicated to strength training. The other half will be dedicated to speed, agility, plyos, some core work, things of that nature. Due to the space and the access we have in terms of how many girls we're going to work with at a time, we're going to have a handful of girls working out on a court area, doing a lot of the plyometrics, a lot of the speed drills that we need to do to, again, help build tissue tolerance, help them understand where they should be, where they can move to safely, but they also can be strong and powerful from. If they understand these, now they can carry that over to the court when they start going into practice. The other half will be in the weight room working early on. We're going to work a lot on, like I said, coordination and work capacity early. I need you to be able to withstand multiple sets of things, and I need you to understand getting your body into the right positions. Once we do that, then we'll start loading it. And then from there, it will depend on how, an athlete's mindset of their determination to progress, I think, is a big part early on, because we do have some standards that they'll have to progress to. So you have to earn your way to a barbell. You won't be just tossed with a barbell in your hand. We'll start with dumbbell, kettlebell, bodyweight movements first. But from there, once you hit those standards, we have a progression that you'll move forward to into more front loading squatting, eventually into back squatting, but you got to be able to front squat your body weight for 3 sets of 5 before I'll load a bar on your back. A lot of people think that's wild. They're like, that's so much. I'm like, yes and no. I mean, if I'm working with a 13 or 14-year-old kid, that may take a year or two to do. If I'm working with a high school junior or senior, that should take 3 or 4 months to do if I train them well. It feels like the first month because we do have that microwave mindset. It feels like that first month, this is taking forever, this is so slow, but you don't understand that 3-4 months down the road, when I set you up to actually put a bar on your back, you have built such a great foundation that we're going to be able to run, and not just kind of run, jog. We're going to be able to run. We're going to be able to sprint. And so, that's early on. A lot of my goal is to build that body awareness and that capacity, so that way we can run later on down the road. But then also to build that tissue tolerance and resiliency in the body we talked about. The better an athlete understands where they should be, and the more they repeat that, one, we're integrating good movement so they remember how to do that. But then two, we're also building armor around the joints and around the areas that receive a lot of shear and stress in training. And so helping them be able to withstand that now better and not feel like, crap, I just beat the crap out of my body walking to practice. I'm not gonna be able to walk for 2 days. Like, oh yeah, I just beat my body up, but the next morning I get up and I feel pretty good, because my body is more prepared for those demands. And I think that's gonna be one of the biggest things, is allowing their body to be able to withstand some of the demands of training better. It's just when you get a lot of repetitive jumping and action on the floor, and we're stuck in padded shoes all the time, like we lose function of the foot, which starts trickling up the chain. And so teaching an athlete how to regain and understand function of the foot can help them now just, one, jump better, but then two, it's going to help take care of a lot of the joint issues up the chain because they understand how to create pressure against gravity better.
Attendance, showing up, putting in the reps and doing them competently, listening, responding. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it year over year. I guess, Mike, an extension of this, what's the promise you've made to your coaches? You're made to commit to this, but we're speaking with you so far. What are the things you're telling them to expect from Eric and his team?
Well, one of the things, aid. You're talking, the one component that is left out of this always by almost all strength coaches, all sport coaches, is the inherent growth of confidence. That's amazing element of this. You can take somebody that is mired knee deep in failure or struggling on the court. You can take them into a weight room where they see these incremental gains, and confidence grows immensely with every small incremental gain. It's amazing. The percentage of growth is immense, confidence-wise, as compared to the incremental growth in the weight room. The weight room is the greatest ally for confidence. So for my coaches, and understand that the term coach is English from the standpoint it was a mode of transportation. And it was a method to take somebody from point A to point B. And so Eric, yourself, what I do, we're kind of transformational specialists. That's really what we are. I don't know if we're necessarily strength coaches or volleyball coaches, but we would be deemed as if we were lumped into one group. We would be put over in that corner of guys that they specialize in transformation. Mm-hmm. The biggest point of transformation by what he's talking about, to understand your body is one thing. To accept and really enjoy your body is a massive thing. And for kids to be able to look and understand and gain great confidence will change every aspect of coaching for my guys. Because my guys now are dealing with a much more alert and engaged athlete because they're confident. You know, I think that showing up is one thing, being where your feet are is another. You know, and it's easy to be where your feet are when you're a confident soul and you realize now that I do have the strength to do this skill set. Some of these kids fail on the court, not because they're not good, because they're not physically stable enough to do what we're asking them. It's the greatest tool we've given our coaches in the last 30 years.
Excellent. Here's another one. Let's take it a little bit deeper. I'd love you to start with this, Mike, as it relates to, I mean, you can even just take this from volleyball and then we'll work backwards. I'd love to hear you hit this from the sports performance side. So how important is assessment of athletes, and what should we be assessing, especially when it comes to like volleyball?
I think it's easy. What is measured is rewarded. You know, I think that if people bother to measure something, there is a reward or an outcome involved. I think that our sport is very metrics based. How high do you touch? How fast do you run? And just like every other sport, everything's based on combine-esque skill sets. It is because we need another tool of evaluation. So in our game, you know, let's look at a team, and a team goes out or an athlete goes out and she's not starting. Let's say she's not starting for the team she's on. That's not necessarily only dictated by her abilities. It's also dictated by the abilities of others around her. If there are 7 kids that are better than her, she feels like she's a failure based on the fact that she is not on the floor. That is not true. That could have something to do with the other 7 are just inches ahead of her and moving. We're all moving, but sometimes we don't see that motion because we're stuck in the emotion of not being on the floor. The assessment is to allow people, and for kids, it's important for them to understand they are moving. I am getting better. And so the assessment, while we use it to do a lot of different things, namely evaluate our teaching methods, it's also another tool to let these guys know that we're moving. It's not a generation that embraces incremental growth. It is not. This program and what Eric really masters is the value of incremental growth. You know, 1 pound is 1 pound. And I think the sooner they embrace that and understand that, the faster they'll grow. I think it's massive. We need to be able to show the athlete, we need to be able to show the customer that they're growing. This gives us yet another way to show people, hey, you know, we're getting where we go. Remember, I loop all the way back to the start. Athletic excellence, lifetime experience. If I can show that your body, your athleticism is growing immensely in the weight room, I've got half of that already achieved. You know, and I'm moving towards my end goal or my end philosophy, just as he is. So I think it's the most critical part of it.
And I love too how you talked about like it's easy to get caught in comparison, what you don't have control over, versus looking at the things that you do have control over. Like you can put reps toward, I can tangibly move something, versus if Sally or Tina are better than me doing the same thing, it's so easy to get caught in that like despair loop. Oh, they're always jumping a little bit higher than me, or they're going a little bit more than me, versus these type of metrics you're talking about are like they're centered on you and things that you can actually control.
Well, we always harp on best version. You be the best version of yourself. And that gets lost in team sports because, you know, yourself. I mean, that seems almost selfish. Right. But this gives the individual a chance to maximize themselves. And, you know, at the end of the day, a better you is a better us.
Right.
And so it's about each person getting better.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. All right, Eric, from the sports performance side, like, is assessment important? Which it sounds like an obvious question. And then just talk about what should be assessed and why.
Yeah, I think from a base level, it's important to one, see, did we see improvement by adding this in, right? Did this get improved? What gets tracked gets improved, right? So we get a base level to one, see, do we see progress over time? Two, it's also useful for me to get an idea how an athlete moves. It's not going to tell me everything if I just do one assessment, but really as a coach, I'm always assessing their movement, right? Because as an athlete, based upon their practice schedule, their school, as much as they sit in a day, like how are their hips moving when they come in today? You know what I mean? That may be off just because they've had more stress of their day and they've been sitting more today. They haven't been as hydrated, right? It's not necessarily they have an actual dysfunction there. We need to give the tissues some love and give the joints some love and get it moving a little bit, And so then if I know that, then I say, okay, we can spend a few more minutes doing that, or we can modify the warm-up doing that. But if I don't know what their normal or natural state is, I'm not going to be able to differentiate that as a coach, right? So I need to, one, have that baseline level, so then I know what I can expect at the start of our sessions. One thing you kind of talked about earlier about holding the rope and holding on to things. I remember back as I was getting on to head coach, you were like, I'm tired of doing leg swings. Like I promote CrossFit, but leg swings at the beginning of our warm-up, like let's do something different. And I'm like, we can do all sorts of things, but the leg swing is my one assessment tool that I really get to see. Where's your hips moving at today? Where's your mindset at? Where's your balance at on the foot that's on the ground? Like there's a lot of things I'm actually watching that, as much as I'm nonchalantly walking around and talking to people. When I'm talking, I'm paying attention to what's going on, And so I think it's important that when you're working with an athlete, you're always assessing, because that's going to give you a gauge of how you need to approach the next drill, how you communicate with them next, things like that. I do think from a base level up front, that also gives us something to give them targets to aim at too, because if I give them targets, it's going to help them become a better version of themselves. Like Mike mentioned, the best version of you is the best version for the team. So now if I can give you targets to help, this is what the better version of yourself looks like, or best version looks like. Now I can strive to achieve that. So that way it helps bring up that system as a whole of the team.
Yeah. And I love how you differentiated assessment of the day versus assessment overall. Because assessment of the day, how high can I jump? How fast am I? That's a bigger, longer term investment, requires Mike all that like mundane, like, well, it's not moving, but assessment of the day is sometimes left to the side because warm up is boring. Cool down can be boring. You know what I mean? It's those things like, I already know how to do this. I feel good today, coach. Great. Let me see it. Great. Why don't we just do this over here? Where that's another level of protection for that athlete to know, like, is the training we're going to do today appropriate for who walked in the door today? And that might be a different girl than walked in the door yesterday. Based upon what went on, school stress, other things going on, and that's a great way to assess that. It's beautiful. All right, last one. Just this is kind of an open forum, and you can pass the baton, either one of you. What should we expect from here? What else would you like to share?
Fire.
So honestly, one of the things I'm excited about here is getting the ability to dive a little deeper into the daily assessment side of things, having having the groups that we have available that all are in a similar realm, and some of the equipment that we're going to have access to. One of the things that we're going to get is a velocity measuring device. And so one of the things that we probably won't do it very early on, because we want to spend time teaching and building that foundation. But as girls start getting the gist of things, we'll have a daily assessment test that is probably a counter movement jump or 2 or 3 different like power-based drills. And that gives us a gauge based on their baseline. If we're down 10% or more, what's going on outside of the gym? Or am I just beat up from training? If I'm maybe higher, I know this is a day I can run a little bit, so maybe I get to adjust that in. But if I'm on the low end, maybe I have to adjust down to accommodate, to make sure I'm not overtraining. So I think that's one of the big things that I'm really excited for, is being able to use and project more objective data, because I do think this day and age, we do tend to rely a lot on, well, it feels like I'm getting better. It seems like I'm getting better. This feels better. And I think those those subjective points are important, but we also need objective data. It's like, well, I feel like I'm jumping higher. I feel like I'm getting better. And it's, I got to reach 10.2. Well, I'm only at, 9.11 still. I'm jumping higher than the 9.9 I was, but I'm still not where I need to be. So I can't hit cruise control totally. I got to still, moving forward with that. And so I think being able to have clear ability to test and track that, I think is going to be really fun. Especially with as many girls as we have. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to, because I think that we can see, I think when you put that data in front of people, it keeps that target in front of them better, to keep that motivation a little bit higher. And so I think this day and age, if we can do that, that helps drive results better.
Excellent. Mike?
Yeah, I think the thing I expect most is probably, I would say, self-discovery. It really excites me. Knowing what I know about the weight room or the strength facility, knowing what I know about Eric and yourself, BJ, for me, it's really hard to bridle my excitement, because I think that the self-discovery that I know comes out of that domain is unreal. And self-discovery is such a liberating thing for these guys. It's going to allow them to gain and grow immensely. And I think it's, like I said, it's one chapter of the book that we haven't had in there. And this perhaps, I don't know, could be the greatest chapter of what's been a beautiful book for Munciana. Mm-hmm. But anytime we can hand over the reins of self-discovery to kids, and to do it on their own, mm-hmm. to do it on their own, and to do it daily, and to be able to look back at where they were, I think is remarkable. And self-discovery is kind of leads to dreams, and dreams are what makes life tolerable. And if we can grow more dreamers, if we can grow more liberated athletes in a sense where they know that they're bridled only by their sense of work ethic, man, I've done my job. I'll lay down at that. I can lay down and rest easily at that point. But that's what I'm most excited about, and that would be my expectance. That's what I expect of myself. That's what I expect of you guys. And like I said when we were just chatting casually before, excellence tends to hang out with excellence. Mm. It's not like they don't discriminate, but excellence just doesn't have a whole lot of time to chat with mediocre. Mm-hmm. Just don't mm-hmm. share a lot of in common, so it's a boring conversation. But when you put excellence in the same room with excellence, all hell breaks loose. Mm. And that's what I'm excited about.
I love it. Yep. I'm motivated now. Well, and for my part, like what I expect and what everyone else should expect is best effort. It's not only intention behind this. I think Munciana is obviously your story, but I mean, we've spent 11 years earning it, yep. like out there working, and Eric and I both have a history even before that, mm-hmm. that we've been together working and earning this. So it's not some run-of-the-mill group that you brought off the street, but in that same sense, we're also incredibly grateful mm-hmm. for this opportunity. It's to work with your athletes, to work within Munciana that obviously we've aspired to for some time. And you've been just a great figure for us to aspire to, Mike, in all the work that we're doing. And I'm also excited for the next generation of coaches. There's one Mike, there's one Eric, there's one me, but there's knowledge that's continually being transferred for kids that are going to impact mm-hmm. other kids' lives through the work that we're going to do because of the methods and everything else. Yep. I mean, that's the teach a person to fish piece. It's not only mm-hmm. just the athlete, it's these coaches, as you scale and move things out, that more kids can be impacted by this type of work that I'm super excited for.
So one time someone referenced that I was the father of 6, and it was a lifetime friend, and I kind of looked and I thought, out of all my friends, he should realize I only have 5 children. And then he kind of looked, he said, you look puzzled. And I raised my hand, I said, no, 5. He said, no, 6. Munciana is your 6th child. Mm. I wouldn't let anybody into my family that I didn't trust, believe in, respect. That's why it's Arsenal. That's why. And I made that abundantly clear mm-hmm. from the start. Mm-hmm. There's only one person I want coming in and doing this. There's only one group that I think can do exactly what I think we need, is to take us from being something really special to becoming just an absolute legend. And that's your group. And I have witnessed over the 11 years, but I've witnessed a lot longer. I know what passion brings to the table, and without great passion, nothing occurs. Mm. And I like our chances.
Thank you, Mike. Yep. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Eric. Closing out, what to expect from here in terms of follow-up. How do I learn more? When's the facility going to open? When can I see it? What's it going to look like for the coaches that Mike has under his tutelage? Like, when are we going to get to meet and talk with Eric more? All of that's to come. We promise to make that easy to find, easy to sign up, easy for intros, easy for open houses. All of that's going to come. So keep your eye out. Anytime you see Muncie and Arsenal together, there'll be something to do with that. There'll be some next coming around the corner. And as you can tell, all of us are incredibly excited for that. So Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, thanks.
Thank you.